Thank you, Stacy. Keith Rothfus is our next speaker, and he went to the evil empire in 2013 and served in the House of Representatives and came back with his principles intact. He served a large swath of western Pennsylvania during that time, was on the House Financial Services and Judiciary Committees. He is also a guy who helped to pass legislation during that time that was signed into law to promote economic opportunity and address the opioid issue that has been so prevalent here, especially in Pennsylvania. He practiced law in Allegheny County before going into politics in Washington, D.C., and more important, policy, and he also worked for the Department of Homeland Security. We're very pleased to have with us this afternoon Keith Rothfus. Please welcome him.
Hello, Pennsylvania conservatives. Good afternoon. You know, this is the second time in a couple of weeks that I've had to follow our treasurer. You know, that is so difficult. You know, we had her speaking in Pittsburgh a couple of weeks ago, and you may not know, but she is known as the angel of the desert because of her service in Iraq, and I'm just very grateful to have a woman as tough as her taking care of the books of Pennsylvania. So it's great to have Stacy. I'm going to talk for a little bit about redistricting because it's some issue I'm pretty familiar with after the last few years. This is a process that happens every 10 years under our Constitution. We do a count in the country. We find out how many people there are, how many people are in each state, and then each state gets allotted a certain number of representatives for the House. So the census numbers came in. Pennsylvania actually grew over the last 10 years. We added 300,000 people, going from 12.7 million to 13 million, but we didn't grow enough. Other states were growing at a much healthier clip. The 10 fastest growing states were growing between 10 and 18%. You know, if Pennsylvania had grown by 15% over the last 10 years, we would have added 1.9 million people to this state. Our governor candidates need to take note of that. We need to have policies in this state that are really propelling the growth of this state to be competitive with the other states. And as a result, Pennsylvania is losing a congressional seat. We're going from 18 down to 17. You know, those numbers came out on April 26th, and right on cue, on April 26th, we had a progressive liberal lawyer from Washington, D.C., file a lawsuit here in Pennsylvania. This lawyer is the same lawyer who hired Fusion GPS for the Hillary Clinton campaign back in 2016 and helped to concoct the whole Steele dossier. And you know where that went. And it's the same lawyer who last year in 2020 filed a dozen lawsuits across a dozen states, including here in Pennsylvania, trying to gum up the election, trying to ask progressive courts to do things like take in votes that come after the election day. So this lawyer, Mark Elias, files another lawsuit the very day the census numbers come out here in Pennsylvania. And what does he ask for? Well, he asked the Commonwealth Court, number one, to declare that the map, the congressional map that we have, the one that was given to us by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, is unconstitutional. Hey, welcome to the party. Now he tells us he wants the courts in this state to enjoin the use of that map. You talk about I'm going to say a no-shoot Sherlock, because my kid might be watching. No-shoot Sherlock moment. Dude, we lost a seat. That 18-district map right now, it's void. It's invalid. You don't need to go to court and ask for this. He also wants the court to get ready to draw a new map. This guy, this lawyer has been sanctioned by a federal court in New Orleans for filing misleading filings. We can tell how serious our courts are if they want to sanction this guy for filing such a frivolous lawsuit at this point. What's it all about? Is it intimidation? Trying to scare the courts? Trying to send a message? Trying to grab jurisdiction to keep him in the Pennsylvania, aiming at the Pennsylvania Supreme Court? And we know what they've done. they had a very political decision, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, back in 2018, where they came up with new law, inventing new law, to impose upon the state its own preferred map. How did that happen? Chief Justice Roberts took a look at these partisan gerrymandering cases a couple years ago at the U.S. Supreme Court. And he said that the founders assigned elections responsibility to political entities, notwithstanding the potential for electoral problems. Under this construct, representatives in state legislatures would be accountable at the ballot box to the people of their respective states if the people were unhappy with the results. But that principle of accountability for our state legislatures was upended by our Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Back in 2011, our General Assembly passed a map with a bipartisan vote. That map was in place for 6 years and 3 congressional elections. However, after the state Supreme Court gained a Democratic majority in the 2015 elections, with candidates who ran on a gerrymandering issue, where they talked about this during the campaign. After that happened, activists filed suit. And lo and behold, in January of 2018, just weeks before candidates were going to be circulating petitions to get on the ballot, the court upended it all. They ruled that congressional districts have to consist of compact and contiguous territory, nearly equal in population, and not divide political subdivision municipalities. Where did they get that language from? That language actually comes out of the Pennsylvania Constitution. And the people of Pennsylvania wanted that standard to apply to state legislative districts. So our Pennsylvania Constitution has an express provision applying that language to state legislative districts. At the same time, that Constitution has a provision calling for free and equal elections. Do you think that the people wanted them to apply to congressional districts? They would have done that. What the court did, you had 5 citizens of this state make that decision for the whole state. They literally rewrote the Constitution. That's not their job. That's not their job. Which again, Stacy mentioned this about the races coming up this year. That Supreme Court race is critical. You need to be involved in that. So we have this map, a very political decision from the court. And if we can get the first slide up. A political decision produces a political result. And don't think there wasn't some gerrymandering going on when the Supreme Court gave us this map. And this is the district I was running in. And you can look on the left is the map that the Supreme Court gave us. You see a couple protrusions, the blue ones on the lower end. We have PH, that's Penn Hills on the right. We have Mount Lebo on the left. These 2 protrusions into what is the district that Mike Doyle has out of the city of Pittsburgh. On the right, you see Plum Borough. That used to be in the same district as the blue stuff on the North Hills. Plum Borough, in 2016, voted for the Republican 60% to 40% by a margin of about 2,900 votes. On the other hand, Penn Hills voted for the Democrat 72% to 28% by a margin of about 8,900 votes. So here the court took a Republican-leaning Plum Borough and tucked it into the same district that's in the city of Pittsburgh, pretty much wiping out those votes. Those votes won't count anymore. But putting the heavily Democratic votes of Penn Hills into the North Hills district. They did the same thing on the southern part, where they took a heavily Democratic suburb like Mount Lebanon and put it into the district, leaving out the Republican-leaning Upper St. Clair. This was a pure political drive by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and the result was this became a Democrat-leaning district. The point is, politics are always involved, no matter who is drawing the map. The Supreme Court, in its decision, was talking about some of the voters who had filed this litigation. If we could have the next slide up. They talked about a voter in my old district. It's where the blue star is on both maps, the town that that person is from. On the left is the old district map, on the right is the new. And they were very concerned about this plaintiff who lived where that blue star is, because that plaintiff said, you know, I don't agree with my congressman, that would have been me, on anything, and I'll never have a chance of voting or having the Democrat running in this district win the election. And so what did the Supreme Court do? They put that person, after shedding some crocodile tears, into a district that is even more Republican than the one he had been in. And the fact of the matter is, he was living in a district that a Democrat could have won. That district that I represented had the same partisan breakdown as a district that existed north of Pittsburgh in the 2000s, a district that had been won both by a Republican candidate and a Democrat candidate. And if you remember back in the 2000s, we started the 2000s in 2002 with a state delegation of 12 Republicans and 7 Democrats. By 2008, it was 12 Democrats and 7 Republicans. So again, the Supreme Court in its 2018 decision had a goal, and that was to make sure that there were more Democratic members out of Pennsylvania. And at the same time, the court ignored some of its own language. Can I have the next slide? So this is what Allegheny County was broken down on the left prior to the Supreme Court's decision, where it had 3 members of Congress. On the new map, it only has 2 members of Congress. This is for the county that has 1.2 million people. Next slide. Butler County, just north of Pittsburgh, has about 184,000 people. Before the redistricting, it had 1 member of Congress. But after, it now has 3 members of Congress. So the county north of Allegheny County that has 1/6 the people has 50% more representatives in Congress. Again, it all depends on who's drawing the map. The process is going underway. We'll see what the state legislature, that's their job under our federal constitution, to draw that map. They have to come up with something that the governor will sign. But off in the wings, we are looking at a potential for the Supreme Court to be doing more mischief. The key here is to stay engaged, to let your legislators know how you think this map should be drawn. Let's see what the governor does. Maybe they will negotiate something that will be fair for everybody. There's a real push across the country to have nonpartisan, so-called nonpartisan or independent commissions draw the map. What does that do to you? What does that do to the people? We hear about this H.R. 1 bill in Washington, D.C. There's a provision in there that would require every single state to have a commission draw the map. That violates the principle, the fundamental principle that the founders in Philadelphia understood, that sovereignty is in the people. This has to do with government of, by, and for the people. We don't need an independent commission drawing a map. We want the people's representative drawing the map, because then we can hold the people's representatives accountable. If you don't like what this independent commission does, how do you get rid of the independent commission? You don't. If you don't like what your state legislature does, guess what? You get to go to the ballot box. You get to vote against that state legislature. This has been going on for a very long time with this idea that we cannot let the people's representatives pass the laws. And a district map is a law. And under principles of self-rule, self-government, that law should come from the legislature, not some agency, not some bureaucracy, not from some commission. And we see it here in this small little redistricting context, but this happens across the federal government with all these agencies. It's time to put the people back in charge. The Democrats who have voted for this H.R. 1, which has so many issues wrong with it, they say it's for the people. But when you take the people acting through their duly elected representatives out of the equation, you're against the people. We, conservatives, however, are for the people. And we want to empower the people's representatives to do their job. So stay tuned. Let's keep fighting. God bless you. God bless Pennsylvania. Thank you.